welcome to the Politics Chicks podcast. I'm Christy Branham.
And I'm Monica Healy.
Today, we're excited to welcome back Trina Swanson, Democratic candidate from Minnesota's 8th Congressional District. Trina first joined us earlier this year, and since then, she's spent nearly every day traveling one of the largest and most geographically diverse congressional districts in the country.
Over the past 9 months, Trina has visited communities across the Iron Range, Duluth, the North Shore, tribal nations, farming communities, manufacturing towns, and small businesses throughout northeastern Minnesota, listening to voters and building what has become one of the most active congressional campaigns in the state.
With just weeks remaining before Minnesota's August 11th DFL primary, we're talking about what she's hearing on the ground, the challenges facing the district, why she believes she's the strongest Democratic candidate in the race, and what her vision is for Minnesota's future.
Hey, Trina, welcome back.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
We're so excited to have you. We haven't seen you in a while, and the last time you were on here, I checked, was March.
Oh, wow.
So
You've been busy.
A lot has really happened between now and then. So fast forward 4 months and you've spent countless hours on the road meeting with voters across northeastern Minnesota. And before we dive into policy, how's the campaign changed you, both as a candidate and as a person, do you think?
That's a great question. So we really were building this plane as we were flying it in terms of the campaign. And I've changed as a candidate because I truly understand what it means to run a federal campaign now and how many people it takes and how much organization and all of the moving parts that we have to ensure are aligning and the balls that we don't want to drop. And so it's definitely been an eye-opening experience just to understand what it means to run for a position like this. Personally, I think it's changed me in the sense that I've had to put up more boundaries. And I don't know that I love that, but everybody thinks they have the secret sauce on how to win. And you can't listen to all of the voices because one voice will say, oh, your social media is great. And then the next voice will say, it's terrible. And at the end of the day, you have to feel confident in the campaign you're running and who you are. And then just set those boundaries of, I'm running it how I think it's best with my inner circle advising me and move on from that. And I've also learned people that you thought were your friend and supporter at the end of the day might not be. And that was a hard lesson to learn as well, because I naturally trust people and I naturally bring people into my kind of inner circle quickly. And I've had to learn that that's not really the best way forward because this is a dirty world and you can't trust everybody, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Christy and I have sort of been exposed to that a little bit as we have delved deeper into the world of politics and seen that, everyone knew that it's not necessarily a pretty world, but it's a little shocking when you see what is really there. That said, though, we have also seen a ton of positivity around your campaign. And earlier this year, delegates from across Minnesota's 8th Congressional District overwhelmingly endorsed you as the DFL candidate at the district convention. You've received the support of 70% of the delegates in the first round vote. But you do have a Democratic challenger. Luke Branson continued his campaign rather than seeking the party's endorsement. So now Democratic voters will make the final decision in the August 11th primary. So we'd like to give you the opportunity to explain what you believe are the biggest differences between your campaign and his. When voters compare your experience, your preparation, your campaign organization, your vision for representing Minnesota's 8th, why do you believe that you're the strongest candidate to carry the Democratic banner and ultimately be the best person to defeat Pete Stauber in November?
Beat Pete.
Yes.
Beat Pete.
And get him out of office in November. Look, I want to give him kudos for running. Anybody that's willing to throw their hat into the ring and run for office should be recognized. It takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there. And it's a lot of work. But this is the biggest election, I think, in the history of our country. And I know we like to say that about a lot of elections, but we are really on a cliff right now. And if we don't have a blue wave in Congress to put a check on this administration, who knows what will happen in the last 2 years of his term. And so this is not a time to just get anyone in office. It needs to be people that have the skill set to do the job, that actually have the experience in public service or in the areas that matter that Congress deals with. And so I am that person that can do that. I have experience in foreign policy and diplomacy and national security and immigration. I have the breadth of experience to actually go in and build coalitions and push laws and be a voice of reason and leadership in Congress. And that's what we need. We don't need people that will go in and just vote how the party tells them and just be a rubber stamp. And that stands for either side. So I think it's time for us to have a representative in this district that looks out for our district, that looks out for the working class, and that can actually get stuff done. We don't need someone to go in who just recognizes the hockey team, right? Like, you are in Congress, you have people's lives in your hands in terms of what you are doing daily and the money that you're ensuring people get for their needs. And so it's just too serious. And I'm excited to be able to use all of that experience I gained in my 25-year career as a public servant and represent the people and continue to serve the country just from an elected position instead of that public service position.
Monica and I have often talked about you and Doug Chapin as being plug and play candidates. First of all, you both know where the cafeteria is in the Capitol.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, you both have this giant acumen and this giant body of experience to rely upon. Like, you, if you were elected to Congress, have identifiable skills that can be used when placing you on your committee assignment.
Yeah.
Right. And that is important, because a lot of the skills that you have will have to do with things that you do to represent Minnesota.
Absolutely. And look, we can't have a representative that's going to take their entire first term just figuring out the ropes and how it works
Yeah.
and where the bathroom is. We have to be ready to hit the ground running because there is too much at stake right now. And we know that big, beautiful bill, they purposefully left things to hit after the midterms. So it's going to be a very quick turnaround to undo all of that harm that's going to come to this district. And we need people that can go in and do that right away.
Yeah. And campaigns are just about so much more than advertising or social media. They're about building trust and relationships and organizing volunteers, having that skill set. But on top of that, raising resources and listening to the people that you represent. And looking back over the past 8 or 9 months, what do you think your campaign has demonstrated that voters may not fully appreciate unless they've been following it closely?
That I am willing to listen and learn and grow as a candidate and as a representative in the future. And so when I traveled to all 21 counties in just April alone, we held an open listening session in every single county. We said, show up, tell us what's on your mind. I shared my story, what I stand for, why I'm running, and what I want to do in Congress. And that opened a line of communication. It wasn't just me talking at people. It was opening up a conversation and starting a relationship. So I'd met with farmers and small business owners, and I've gone to mental health clinics. I've gone to hospitals. I've gone to shelters. I've spoken to pharmacists. So I'm learning and growing as I move through this campaign. I don't know everything. Vulnerability should be something that we appreciate in our candidates and our representatives, to admit we don't know everything and to draw from the experts out in the community that do know a particular area better than I do and take in that information so that I'm better informed when I'm in Congress and I can actually push things through that matter to the folks here.
You mentioned that your district has 21 counties and you visited all 21 counties in April. And for our
That is
listeners,
insane.
this is a
That's just insane.
huge geographic area of northern
Yes.
Minnesota. And I can imagine that this is just exhausting to do this. And you grew up in the district, but because it's so diverse and huge, and now that you have crisscrossed it all over, are there things that have surprised you?
I think what has surprised me, a couple things, and I'll start with the negative one first, but I want to end with the positive. So one is how much people have bought into the culture wars and what the government,
Yeah.
particularly the Republican Party, has tried to tell people in order to divide us and pit us against one another. When in reality,
Hmm.
we have far more in common than we don't. And so I wish people would be able to look at it from that more macro perspective that I see it, in that we all have the same hopes and dreams and wants and needs, and people are just trying to raise their family and stay in the communities they love. And they're trying to retire with dignity and be able to make ends meet at the end of the month. And yet we've just been told, oh, you should blame this group of people for this problem. or you should vote on a single issue, or, you really shouldn't talk to your neighbor unless they believe in the same God as you. And so that part has been surprising in that some of these folks, I feel like, are voting against their own best interest in many ways because of a single issue where they've been told that that single issue should get them to the voting booth and vote for this particular party. But I would love for people to realize that we are we're fighting the same fight, right? We want to be able to have that life of dignity. And we can do that. We just need to realize that right now, this government is pitting right versus left, when in reality, it's the 1% versus the 99. And we are being told to look at so many fires and divert our attention while the government is prioritizing the 1% over the rest of us.
Absolutely.
The shared humanity
Um,
is key.
And I hope that once this midterm is over, that we can start the process of at least trying to heal. It's going to take quite a while to undo what's been done in this country, not just politically, but socially across all of the cultures in the United States, because each state, even each part of a state has its own culture. And I'm about to ask you about that right now, because Minnesota's 8th district is unlike almost any other district in America. So I think it's going to take some time for people to actually sit back and reflect upon what we've all become. And I got to say, people on the left are just as guilty as people on the right. A lot of times you can get caught up in your own echo chambers, and that isn't how you base communication and respect. You have to be willing to listen to each other. And I think we've lost that. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes. And one of the things that I do when I go out is say, help me be an extension of this campaign. And what that means is go out and talk to 5 new people a week about me and what I stand for and what I want to bring to this job. But start it with a question and say, help me understand why you voted for him in the past. What was the reason? And then listen. And then have a conversation. So it's not about shaming. It's not about saying you were wrong. It's about engaging with your neighbors again and trying to understand their perspective. And then we talk in facts. We don't have to talk in hateful rhetoric. Let's actually look at what he's voted for and what he's voted against and how that's negatively impacted families in this district. And that's my way of talking with people that may not think they want to support me, or think that I'm just going to come in and shame them for their vote, which I don't do.
I love that you just put it like that, don't you, Monica?
Absolutely. And we've talked before about how when dealing with people who don't necessarily share your views, the best way to approach it is through curiosity. Like, how did you come to those views, and where are you basing that? I struggle with that a little bit.
I think we all do at this point, right? But yes, I agree with both of you. So, Trina, I'm going to get back to the question I said I was about to ask you, which is that Minnesota's 8th district is unlike any other congressional district in America. And maybe it's a Minnesota thing because to us, it is what it is. But a lot of people just don't understand it because it includes Duluth, which is a major shipping and trade lane.
Uh-huh.
It includes the Iron Range and the Boundary Waters. And there are multiple tribal nations that are also in your district as well. Family farms, manufacturing communities, foresting, tourism, shipping, and thousands of square miles of rural America. And there's also mining. After spending nearly 8 months immersed in those communities, what have you learned about the district that you simply couldn't have understood before launching this campaign?
That people have different issues that are their greatest concern. And that is dependent, I think, on the area where they're living. So up towards the Boundary Waters, right? That's their greatest concern because a lot of them are in the tourism industries. If the Boundary Waters get damaged, that will impact their livelihood. They're seeing issues with Canadians not coming to town because of, the language and the hate directed at them from the president. And then you go south and there are different issues. They're worried about HCMC possibly closing, what that would mean for their hospitals, how far they're traveling for their health care. And then you go to the range and it's all about mining, and we have 600 miners laid off. So it's really understanding the different issues going on within those 21 counties, but then bringing those people all together. And that's the challenge. So that underlying current of all of them is the affordability crisis and the fact that
Yes.
people are not better off today than they were last year. And so for their overall, I would say people are sick of politics. They're sick of both sides. They think that people are just coming in and telling them what they want to hear to get their vote, and nobody is solving problems in a way that benefits them. And so it's drawing those folks together as a holistic district to be like, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I'm understanding it. And bottom line, you just want to be able to raise your families and retire with dignity.
So all of these varying communities, all of different interests and problems, what are things that you hear people across the range bringing up?
Would be healthcare and the affordability crisis. And I don't think those are two separate
Yeah.
issues. So people
Right.
always tell me about their insurance premiums going up. And I don't even think we've felt that full pain yet from that big, beautiful bill. They talk about the cost of their prescription drugs going up or their insurance company refusing to give them the treatment that their doctor says they need. Or I've talked to so many people in Grand Marais that have to drive to Duluth for the medical care that they need, which is crazy. That's a long drive. I've done it so many times now, and I can't
I
imagine you need
bet.
medical treatment
It's
and you're
insane.
doing that drive.
Minnesota's huge.
Yeah. And so, and then just the cost of everything going up from gas to groceries to your car insurance to energy prices, right? People are telling me how much their energy has gone up. And now you want to throw a data center in on top of it. And so it is just the affordability crisis. And I think people voted with their pocketbooks in 2024 and were promised day one prices would go down. And we're not seeing that. And we're also seeing an administration that got us into an illegal war without congressional approval and the impact that's had on prices.
Are you hearing that from people that you're talking to?
Yeah.
Issues around the war?
Yes, it does come up. I get asked what I think about it. I get asked if I think it's a legal war. It's hard. We've lost 17 service members in this war. We're putting,
That we know of.
yeah, we're
That we
putting
know of.
putting our troops at risk, and it's just escalating. And it's very dangerous, right? And yes, people are concerned about it and people are asking questions about it.
If I'm not mistaken, Minnesota's 8th district is also demographically has the most elderly people in the state. I believe that is true. And so you're obviously probably dealing with these older Americans while you're out on the campaign trail, people who Monica and I are Gen X, but we're talking about the boomers, right? And the silent generation that are, getting towards the end of their life and they need this healthcare and they need their social security and these fail safes that they've depended on that they worked hard for their whole lives may not last. Is that a concern that you're hearing too?
Absolutely. And we always talk about Social Security on the trail. And I'm for the Social Security Expansion Act. I'm for removing that cap of paying into Social Security, which would make the fund solvent for decades to come. Just because you're
Hmm.
rich doesn't mean you should get to stop paying into it once you reach 180,000 a year. And so those are real conversations. And then we talk about the fact that you have to buy this extra for-profit plan, right? If you care about your teeth or your eyes or being able to hear. And Medicare is great. It works. We know it works. But we do need to expand on that and ensure that people can afford those additional coverage points. And I watch it with my own parents, right, who are both on Social Security. And we talk about inflation and that not keeping up, and they're nervous about it. And will they be able to continue to live? And you try to plan for how many decades you might live after you retire, and will your money run out? And I think it's a very scary thing for people. And then to think about something you paid into your entire career that you should get when you retire and know you can trust it to be there. And then maybe having that rug pulled out from under you worries people. And we know Pete Stauber's solution is to raise the retirement age. And that's
Mhm.
shameful.
It is shameful. And that's one of the benefits of union membership, right? Is you have that collective bargaining, but you also, a lot of unions have pension plans and things that you can buy into. And that's obviously a big part of your district as well as the unions,
Yes.
correct?
And I tell people that all the time, that being in a union gives you that incredible collective bargaining power. And it gives you things that most Americans don't have anymore, which you're absolutely right, is pensions. I watched my dad was in the carpenters union when he was a carpenter, and my mom was in the steelworkers when she was a nurse. And so they do have that pension. And that was incredibly important to them. And I watched them, I always highlight how much their unions were doing for them when I was growing up as a kid. So that's been ingrained in me from day one. And then I was also in a union when I was with the government. I was part of the AFGE before I became management. And I was so proud of the fact that when I did run our office in Minneapolis, I didn't have a single union grievance filed against me, because I realized how important it was to work with that union and ensure that the rights of the employees were being respected.
I'm going to shift gears here a little bit because the Boundary Waters is another part of your district. And we've talked a lot about it here on our podcast, and it's been in the news nationally because of some pretty tragic fires that are happening. Lots of people are wanting to blame it all on Canada, but it's here in Minnesota too. As those fires burn and we're watching tourism suffer and the environment, what's been going through your mind as you're watching these fires rage?
I was actually out on Lake Vermilion doing dock knocking. We were meeting people where they were in the
Dock
water.
knocking.
I
Yeah,
saw that. It looks so fun.
it was really fun. It was so incredibly hot, but it was fun. But I watched a little plume of smoke that day, and I was with Aaron Kenya, and he's like, "We need to watch this." He was really worried. And by the end of our dock knocking day, that smoke had just expanded incredibly. And then we saw all the fires take off. And it's so sad to watch it. And I'm so worried about all of the people, that are in physical danger, could lose their houses. We know all of the people that rely on this tourism season, maybe for their entire year's salary. And so many people are affected. And then my next thought is, we have an administration that have gutted executive agencies, like the federal agencies, right, that are
Hmm.
responsible upkeeping of our forest, and are responsible for emergency responses, and are responsible for firefighting. And we know that there are consequences to Doge. There are consequences to pushing people out of these agencies, to firing them, to not backfilling positions, and to cutting funding. And when you don't have competent leaders in these agencies, we don't have the responses that we need to emergency situations.
So, truly a question of curiosity because the Boundary Waters literally are on the boundary of Minnesota and Canada. There's some cooperation between the two governments. So, as somebody that would represent a district that is on the boundary, how much communication would you have with Canadian government?
It's so critical that we maintain these relationships. And right now, they're just inflating them to threaten the 50% tariff on Canada, blaming them for the fires. I mean, Canada is sending firefighters to help with our fires. It needs to be a cooperative situation. I don't think we need to alienate any of our allies. And so you should have a representative that's willing to engage and communicate and do what's best. And we know when Canada changed their rules about reporting once you enter into their country, Stauber just kind of went after them and tried to bully them. And it's like, there are
Yeah.
consequences to you not maintaining good relationships and threatening to make them the 51st state, right? And so
Right.
it's just not an appropriate way to engage our neighbors.
Do you guys remember back in there was the early 2000s, the South Park movie that came out, and like this one of the songs in it, it was about going to war with Canada, basically. And one of the songs was Blame Canada. And I think the reason that the South Park writers, they're just brilliant geniuses representing a mirror of culture for us to look at so that we can look at ourselves kind of in a way.
Mhm.
The whole idea behind that movie was that it was such a ridiculous notion that we would ever be at adversity with perhaps our greatest and strongest and most proximal ally.
Hmm.
And to see this happening right now is just absolutely unfathomable to me.
It's
You know,
incredible.
it just, yeah.
And I heard from somebody in my district that is trying to prevent their house from burning down right now. And he's like, I need this sprinkler system to help protect my house. And it's coming from Canada. So now you want to
Mm.
slap tariffs on the things that are actually going to help us keep our property. So it's just everything has consequences and they don't seem to care about them.
Another
Yeah.
reason that the Boundary Waters has been in the news lately is because of mining. And Pete Stauber introduced a bill that would allow a Chilean mining company to open up that watershed area. And there is a balance between protecting the environment and mining. And you've talked about this with us before, and we have talked about it on other podcasts. But do you want to touch on that about why that particular bill is a bad idea?
Sure. Well, Pete Stauber is going to try to peg me as anti-mining. I am pro-mining and pro-environment. I am not pro-mining, however, in the Boundary Waters watershed. That's an absolute no for me. It is far too pristine and special and unique area to risk damaging it. And we need to follow the money. We know the money that this
Absolutely.
Yep.
administration that our representative is making in terms of the deals, right? We can look at Antofagasta, that is the Chilean mining company, headquarters in London. He rented out his house to Ivanka Trump and Trump 1.0. They've already been fined for environmental infractions. And we don't have the smelting or processing plants that we actually need in this country. So they like to say the minerals will stay here. I'm not convinced that would happen. So they would have probably be shipped abroad for processing, and then we can beg to buy them back with tariffs in place. Like, make it make sense. And his whole point is we need to reduce our reliance on other nations for these critical minerals. That's not going to happen if they're not processed here. And we know the money is in the processing.
And we just interviewed, that's interesting that you say that. We just interviewed Ingrid Lyons a couple weeks ago, and she's the executive director of Save the Boundary Waters. She actually wrote a guest piece this weekend for our Substack. And she shared with us something that's very interesting. She said that the Chinese, all of the minerals that Antofagasta does extract, should these mines happen. And by the way, she said she is pro mining, but this is the wrong mine in the wrong place.
Mhm.
This has, so, because mining is part of Minnesota's culture, it's a valid part of our industry. Wrong mine, wrong place. Those extracted minerals are going to China, and China is not charging Antofagasta to process them. Were you aware of that?
Well, I was telling people that at the beginning, and I kept getting pushback. Oh, they're not going to China. They're not going to China, Trina. They're staying in the United States. So, yes, I did know that was the plan, even though they're saying it's not
Yes.
the plan.
And there's already an agreement in place.
Wow.
So, yeah, I just find that troubling.
It is troubling. And I get it. People want good paying jobs. The unions want the work to build up the mine. I understand that. But we know once that mine is built, it's mostly robotics that are going to be extracting the minerals. They don't have to be ran from here. There's just not a lot of job creation in the end. And bottom line, we need to bring in industry. We need to bring in good paying union jobs into Minnesota and attract that investment because people want good paying jobs. But this mine cannot happen in that Boundary Waters watershed.
So we've touched on the environment, we've touched on affordability and healthcare, and infrastructure is also a big piece of everything, especially throughout rural districts. And Congressman Stauber voted against the bipartisan infrastructure law. Yet after it passed, celebrated projects funded by that legislation, including the replacement of the Blatnick Bridge connecting Duluth and Superior. So how would your approach to representing northeastern Minnesota differ, and what does effective representation look like? I know you're not going to take credit for bills that you didn't vote for.
I know, I'd take a selfie of yourself in front of the bridge and post it on your social media and say, I did that. Right.
No, I won't be doing that. No. So I have a good story about this. I was chatting with a gentleman. I was at an ALS fundraiser and I said, help me understand why you supported Stauber. And he said, because he got us all of this money for our infrastructure projects in Duluth. And I brought work.
Wow.
And
Oh
I
my good
said,
God.
respectfully, sir, he did not. He voted against that bill. And to his credit, like we had a great conversation. He asked for my information. He was like, I'm going to share your website with all of my friends. They need to know this. And he was in the Carpenters Union. So then he was like, Trina, I need you to go to the Carpenters Hall and ask to talk to the employees at one of their meetings. I was like, just walk in and ask? He's like, yep, just walk in and ask. So I did. And I had a great discussion with the Carpenters union members at one of their monthly meetings. And so that opened up that line of communication, just that one conversation. And now he spreads my message. And so
That's
this is what
great.
we have to do. We have to talk about the facts, what Pete Stauber has done and what he hasn't done, despite taking credit, and how that's impacted this district. So we need a representative fighting like heck for people here, for the money we need for projects, right? For new industries coming in. And he's just not doing that. He's pushing things for the 1%, for the corporations, for the mining companies to make money without caring about how that's impacting anyone here.
And in a hearing, he presented as a set of numbers that showed the amount of job creation that would happen as a result of the mines and that the number of jobs it would create and the income or the income it would generate, the money that those mines would generate is a fraction of what the other industries in that area generate, including the tourism industry, right? Because it's huge.
Yeah, I think we just also need to point out that there are over 600 miners that are laid off right now on his watch. And so they've been
Yep.
laid off for over a year, right? They were losing their unemployment benefits. And so he hasn't been able to actually ensure that the mining industry is robust. We also know that we have U.S. Steel that wants to invest $11 billion in Arkansas for a processing plant because they're a right to work state and they don't use union labor. So it's cheaper and they'll be able to maximize their profit. Why is Pete Stauber not fighting like hell to have that processing plant in Minnesota? We have a real opportunity to be a leader in clean energy. We can be a leader in actually producing green steel, right? We could do that here. Imagine not having to ship
Hmm.
all of our critical minerals out and instead processing them here. And we have an
Yes.
opportunity to be a leader in many of those areas, but you have to fight to draw those industries in and sell Minnesota. And instead, he's going on national television calling Minnesota a failed state. Well, buddy, you're representing 760,000 people in that failed state. So, like, you're not
Right.
drawing in industry if you're not proud of your state and your district and saying what we have to offer.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about how big the district is, a lot of problems facing it, but there are a lot of great things about Minnesota. So,
Hmm.
in this huge district that you are going to represent, what's your favorite place?
Oh, my favorite place is Lake Elora in Canyon. That's where I'd grown up camping. So we camp at a place called the French Club. It sounds real fancy. It's not. It was actually founded by French Canadian settlers to learn English in 1923. And my father went there as a kid, and then we didn't have a lot of money growing up. And so we couldn't afford fancy vacations. And so our vacation was camping. And we started out in tents, then we moved up to a drop camper, like whatever my parents could do with the income they had. Although my mom says she told my dad no more tenting when I started running around with the knife that I found in the kitchen supplies. And she's like, that's it.
Oops.
Like, we're getting a
Oops.
camper with drawers. um, but
Good plan.
like that is my happy place. And so I try to escape there when I can for a night, have a campfire. We have a wood fire sauna. We jump in the lake after. And that's just my place to unwind. And that's also just amazing memories as a family that I have.
Okay, favorite season, and I will warn you, there is a correct and an incorrect answer here.
Uh-oh, I'm scared. Favorite season is fall.
Yes, you are right.
It is the shortest season. Just for our listeners to know, it's what, 3 weeks if we're lucky.
That's true. That's true. We go
So,
from summer to winter. No, the fall is amazing here. And
Mhm.
I'm a seasons girl. So I lived in Nairobi for 4 years and the average temp is 76 year round. It's perfect weather, but I would get depressed because it would never change. And people are like, you're crazy. It's sunny and beautiful every day. But I like the seasons. I like going through that change. I like the different weather. But the cool fall nights are my favorite.
I like
Congratulations, you
sweater
got that
weather.
one right. Yeah, I do
Yeah,
too.
The clothes are more fun in the winter than the summer, like I sweaters and yeah.
I agree.
My mom always said that she didn't like fall because it made her think of what was coming up next. I'm like, oh, don't wish away what's here right now. It's so beautiful.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. What's the favorite campaign stop that you've made thus far? Because you've hit, I cannot believe that you hit every district
Yeah.
in
That's a lot.
April. Like my head wants to explode just thinking about that. I mean, that's insane. So, what's your favorite stop?
My favorite, I'm going to cheat a little bit because every county is so unique and awesome. And I just like met great people everywhere. But I made one stop that was unexpected. And we were going to the range, I think for an event in Chisholm, and we passed the Wellstone Memorial sign.
Mm.
And I had never been there. And I was like, okay, we have an extra 30 minutes, pull off, let's go. And it was a point in my campaign when I was struggling because I was betrayed by people that I thought I really could trust that had my back. And I was just in a point of like, man, why does anyone do this? Like, this is miserable. And I went to this Wellstone Memorial and I walked around alone and I just took a few minutes and I read the signs and I thought about Wellstone and what an incredible man he was and what a leader and how much he had given to the state and his wife too, right? Reading about what she did and how she contributed to causes and what an advocate she was. And I walked away from that and I was like, all right, this is why I'm doing it, right? It is not
Mhm.
about me. It's not about
Yeah.
the naysayers. It's not about the backstabbing. It is about a calling and doing something bigger than yourself and having an incredible opportunity to represent people and give them a voice that they wouldn't otherwise have. And that was a turning point for me.
I love that. And I'm such a huge Wellstone fan. And Minnesota really lost an icon when we lost him, and the country really did too. And I love seeing you walk in his footsteps. And
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that you're going to be the one to lead District 8.
Yeah. And when people hear we all do better when we all do better, Paul Wellstone coined that
Hmm.
saying.
And it's so
So,
true. It's
It's
so
so
true.
true.
And like
mhm.
led us stray from that. And we just need to get back to that. And it's so true.
That's a good moment of hope to leave us on. So, where can listeners learn more about your campaign, volunteer, stay connected?
So my website is a great place to start, trinaforcongress.com. You can learn more about me, who I am, what I stand for, and then there's links to all of my social media on the website as well. So love to have followers, people liking, sharing. Everything we can do to get this message out widely is greatly appreciated. So I'm so excited for the primary. We're going to come out on top on the 11th, and then we're going to pivot to getting Pete Stauber out in November. We're going to do
Yes,
this.
we are.
Yes, you
Yeah, so
are.
excited.
And early voting has already started for the primary. So if you are planning on voting early or if you have your absentee ballot, now is the time to send that in or to cast your votes. And is there anything we didn't ask you about today that you'd like voters to know before August 11th?
Just get out and vote. It is one of the greatest rights we have as Americans. And I think we forget that. So I've worked in
Hmm.
countries where people die every election cycle over the right to vote or the right to have their vote counted. And I think we need to get out and exercise that right and ensure that we help our family and friends do the same if they need a ride, if a
Hmm.
child here, whatever you can do to make sure that everybody goes and vote. It's so important. And it's time for a representative that shows up. And that's what I've been doing. I've proven that, and I'll continue to show up. And so I do want listeners to know that. For me, this is not just a campaign thing. I will continue to show up as the representative. I will hold my head high. I will explain why I voted the way I did on a given bill. And I'll take the feedback and criticism because that's what you should do. And then you learn and you grow. And so I'll continue to show up for Minnesota.
You know, we had Matt Gromlich on. He's running for Mike Johnson's seat. And we asked him, what do you do in situations where you don't know the answer? And he sees that as an opportunity,
Mhm.
right? If you don't know the answer to something, it gives you an opportunity to learn something new. And we need to stop being afraid of not knowing all the answers to things. And I think that's one of the things that I admire about you the most is that you're willing to admit when you don't know everything about a topic, but you're willing to learn and you come back with information. So I think that's another valuable thing that your voters should know about you. That's not knowing the answers, but knowing where to find them is far more important in the
Thank you.
end.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining us again. And we know these final weeks before the primary are incredibly busy. And we truly appreciate you taking your time out of your busy day to sit down with us and share your vision with this campaign and for Minnesota with our listeners.
Thank you for having me back. I appreciate it.
To our listeners, if you are finding meaning in the stories we're sharing, if something moves you, challenges you, makes you see the world a little differently, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. It helps more than you know.
And follow us everywhere at The Politics Chicks on Substack, Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
Keep shining your light so we can find each other in the dark.
And remember, we're stronger together. Thank you so much, Trina. We're so happy to see you again. And hopefully the next time we talk to you, you are going to be the Democratic candidate that is going to beat Pete Stauber in the
Yeah.
election.
Thank you so much, ladies.
Thanks, Trina.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.